swayed by today's vote?
I do not. I think that it is an indication of where the Republican Party is, and I think that the party is in a place that we've got to bring it back from, and we've got to get back to a position where we are a party that can fight for conservative principles, that can fight for substance. We cannot be dragged backward by the very dangerous lies of a former president. I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office.
Woman from Wyoming who does not suffer fools, Liz Cheney, made very clear she'll keep speaking out against Donald Trump and his dangerous lie the 2020 election was somehow stolen from him. Punchbowl News, which covers Capitol Hill, reports today, quote, "The truth is there are Republicans who agree with Cheney that the party has lost its moral compass and is dangerously adrift, but they're too scared to say it publicly. Confronting these obvious problems head on doesn't serve their short-term political interest, avoiding a Trump-backed primary or long-term political interest winning back the House. It's a lot. We have two great men to tackle it. Back with us again tonight, Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, former lieutenant governor of the great state of Maryland, also the host of the Michael Steele podcast. Hey, Michael, given your political leanings and past, after today's giant public genuflection to Donald Trump, and let's not pretend it was anything else, was this a low point for your party? Was this a turning point for your party? What was today?
Oh, I think we did low point a while back. Turning point was even longer. No, this was more of a foundational shift where the party had made the conscious decision to purge itself of individuals with whom they disagreed, not on ideology or the consistency of their views related to party principles and ideals, but because they would not genuflect at the altar of Donald Trump. They would not sacrifice their integrity, their self-respect, their dignity as elected officials for Donald Trump. Liz Cheney took the arrow, walked down the center aisle of the room, looking her members in the eye to that bank of microphones, and declared her independence. She, like many of us, are still Republicans because we were here before stupid took over. And so now it's time to engage in trying to clean this house as best we can. And to the extent that we can't, then we'll move from there. But I thought today was more of a declaration of independence for individuals like Liz, myself, and others, and certainly for the party, a further laying of a cornerstone that, in my view, must be broken, not cemented.
Hey, Gene, I am guessing that, like me, you follow Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report, a terrific analyst of congressional races always across the country. He writes this: if you think Liz Cheney's GOP leadership post is an issue voters are going to care about in the midterm elections, prepare to be sorely disappointed. You agree with that, Gene?
Well, I agree, but I think it's kind of a straw man. I mean, and no, of course, voters aren't going to care about, who was the conference chair of the House Republican caucus, because nobody knows who it is, right? Normally, voters don't know about these sort of internal workings of in Washington, and of course they don't care about it. But I do disagree to this extent. Voters will know, a lot of voters will know who Liz Cheney is, because it's clear she's not going to shut up. She's going to be, I think, Liz Cheney unplugged now, unchained, and to the extent that she has been hamstrung at all by having that leadership position, I think she will feel liberated, and I think she will speak out, and I think a lot of people will give her venues and megaphones with which to speak out. And the second thing is, while voters may not even know who she is, they certainly will know who Donald Trump is, and to the extent that the party in the next election aligns itself, to Trump himself, to this sort of Trump restoration, I think that runs the risk for the party of having the same effect that Trump had in those second and third ring suburbs in 2020, which is to turn them blue, to send them over to the Democrats because they don't like Donald Trump, and an increasing amount of number of people in the country would like to forget him. And so that's the risk the Republicans run electorally, I think.
Michael, Eugene raised an interesting question as part of his answer there in talking about Liz Cheney. People heard her say she's going to do whatever she can to keep Donald Trump away from the Oval Office. Some people immediately to the assumption that she'd be in the 2024 game. She may have to do that without her base in Congress. She will likely be primaried from the right back home in Wyoming. What does her leadership future look like to you?
I think it's wide open, Brian. I think it's whatever Liz wants it to be. And I think that she will find that she has a lot of friends who are willing to stand with her, promote her, lift her, to Gene's point, give her that megaphone, because she is, that clarion call to all, common sense, constitutionalist, oriented Republicans who respect and understand the rule of law and who want to focus on the idea of building and growing an effective two-party system, just as President Biden has noted, and others. And so I think she's in a position to compare and contrast for the country, what leadership looks like, what policy prescriptions sound like and could ultimately be like. And that's going to be an interesting challenge. To Gene's point, how voters digest going into 2022. Absolutely, they don't give a rat's patootie about who's conference chair, but they do care about what the Republican Party has done to a woman in leadership and why they did it. And that's not lost on a lot of folks.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.